Good morning, PreK. It's time for you to join me for the last chapter of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So when we stopped yesterday, they were still in court about the tarts that somebody supposedly stole. And suddenly they said that there was some evidence. Evidence means some proof that something really happened. Let's say, what would evidence be if you came in the kitchen and you saw cookie crumbs and the bag was empty? The crumbs would be the evidence that somebody ate all the cookies. So, they're carrying on about this silly letter, but they don't know who wrote it because no one signed it. So, whom is it to? Said one of the jurymen. To no one at all, said the White Rabbit. In fact, there's nothing written on the outside of the letter. He unfolded the paper as he spoke and added, it isn't a letter after all, it's a set of verses. So someone has written a poem. Please, your majesty, said the knave, I didn't write it and they can't prove I did. There's no name signed to the end. If you didn't sign it, said the king, that only makes the matter worse. You must have meant some mischief, or else you'd have signed your name like an honest man. Begin at the beginning, said the king solemnly, and go on until you come to the end. Then stop. There was silence while the White Rabbit read. They told me you had been to her and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but I said I could not swim. Isn't that the silliest stuff you've ever heard? He sent them word I had not gone. We know it to be true. If she should push the matter on, what would become of you? I gave her one, they gave him two. You gave us three or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before. If I or she should chance to be involved in this affair, he trusts to you to set them free exactly as they were. My notion was that you had been, before she had this fit, an obstacle that came between him, ourselves, and it. Don't let him know she liked them best, for this must never be. A secret kept from all the rest between yourself and me. That makes no sense at all, but I think that she may be Alice. That's the most important piece of evidence we've had yet, said the king, rubbing his hands together. So now let the jury. Is there anyone who can explain those verses? Asked Alice. She'd grown so large in the last few minutes that she wasn't afraid of interrupting him. I don't believe there's any meaning to it. The jury all wrote down on their slates. She doesn't believe there's any meaning to it. If there's no meaning to it, said the king, that saves a lot of trouble, as we should not try to find any meaning. I don't know. He went on, spreading out the verses on his knee and looking at them with one eye. I seem to see some meaning in them after all. Said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you? He added, turning to the knave, and the knave shook his head sadly. Do I look like it, he said, which he certainly did not, being made entirely of cardboard. You know what happens when cardboard gets wet, it just kind of falls apart. All right, so far, said the king, and he looked over the verses, talking to himself. You know it to be true. That's the jury, of course. If she should push the matter on, that must be the queen. What would become of you? What indeed? I gave her one, they gave him two. Why, that must be what he did with the tarts, you know. But it goes on, they all returned from him to you, said Alice. And there they are, said the king, pointing to the tarts on the table. Nothing can be clearer than that. Then again, before she had this fit, you never had fits, my dear, I think, he said to the queen. Never, said the queen furiously, throwing an inkstand at the lizard as she spoke. Then the words don't fit you, said the king, looking around the court with a smile. There was a dead silence. It's a pun, the king added, and everybody laughed. A pun is when we make a funny using words. Let the jury give their verdict, the king said, for about the 20th time that day. No, no, said the queen. Punishment first, verdict afterward. Nonsense, said Alice loudly. The idea of having the punishment first. Hold your tongue, said the queen, turning purple. So here's the king. There's Alice in her very large size. She's looking down at the tarts on the table. So let's see where all this silly... Oh, here's a really... The queen is yelling at Alice, hold your tongue. Alice is squatting down because she's so tall. And the white rabbit is just standing there wondering what this is all about. Very silly. I won't hold my tongue, said Alice. Off with her head, the queen shouted at the top of her voice, and nobody moved. Who cares for you, said Alice. She had grown to her full size by this time. You're nothing but a pack of cards. Suddenly, the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her. She screamed and tried to beat them off, and then found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees onto Alice's face. Wake up, Alice, dear, said her sister. What a long sleep you've had. Oh, I've had such a curious dream, said Alice. And she told her sister, as well as she could remember them, all these strange adventures of hers that you have just been reading about. There's Alice. And this time we know all this silliness was just a dream. Do you have very silly dreams sometimes? I do. And then I wake up and I realize, oh, it was a dream. That was silly. When she'd finished telling her sister kissed her and said, that was a curious dream, dear. Now run in and have your tea. It's getting late. So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran what a wonderful dream it had been. But her sister sat, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun, and thinking of little Alice and all her adventures. With closed eyes, she thought back to when she was young. She half believed that she herself was in Wonderland, a bright-eyed little child once again, filled with simple joys and the curious, wonderful dreams of happy summer days. The end. You did it. We finished. I have a wonderful surprise that goes with this story. It hasn't arrived yet, so I will show it to you when it arrives, but I think you'll like it very much. So you have two surprises waiting for you. The one from Charlotte's Web, and then the one from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Next, I think we'll maybe take a little break. We'll read some just fun short books, and then we'll start another chapter book. Have a great day. Bye.